All right, let's talk about learning. Specifically, I want to explore this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea that the best ways to learn, the ways that really stick, are often the ones that feel the hardest. We're going to break down some of the most common study habits and show you why they don't work, and then replace them with strategies that are actually proven to build knowledge that lasts.
You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You spend the entire night before a test just cramming. You're highlighting, you're rereading your notes, you feel like you've really got it down. And then you walk into the exam, you look at the first question, and it's just gone. Total blank. It's so frustrating. And it makes you think you just didn't try hard enough. But what if the problem isn't how much you're studying, but how you're studying?
So, check this out. This slide really gets to the heart of the issue. Over on the left, you've got all the stuff we tend to do. Rereading, cramming, just hammering away at one topic until we feel like we've got it. And you know what? It feels good. It feels productive. But the science, the actual research points to the column on the right. Things like self-testing, spacing out your studying, and mixing things up. These are the strategies that build real, lasting knowledge, even if, in the moment, they feel a lot harder and a lot slower. So why are we so drawn to the stuff that doesn't work? Well, it comes down to this fascinating idea called the illusion of competence. See, when you reread a chapter for the third time, the words and phrases start to look really familiar. Your brain goes, oh yeah, I know this stuff. But you're mistaking that feeling of familiarity for actual understanding. It's a huge difference, and it gives you this false confidence that just completely falls apart when you actually have to prove you know it.
And this brings us to the core concept for today, a term from researchers Elizabeth and Robert Bjork called desirable difficulties. Now, these aren't just any old roadblocks. These are specific, productive struggles. They're the short-term hurdles that make your brain work harder to understand and recall information. And that extra effort is precisely what forges stronger, more flexible, and more durable memories. The key word here is desirable. You know, if something is so hard you just give up, that's not helping. But if it's just challenging enough to make you struggle a bit, that's the sweet spot. That's the engine of real learning. To really get why this works, you have to understand the difference between two things we always mix up: performance and learning. Performance, or what the Bjorks call retrieval strength, is all about how easily you can remember something right now. When you cram for a test, your performance is through the roof, but it's like a sugar high. It's fragile and it fades fast. Real learning, or storage strength, is about how deeply that knowledge is truly wired into your brain for the long haul. That's built by wrestling with those desirable difficulties, and that's what lasts. The biggest trap we fall into is mistaking that temporary high performance for real learning. Okay, so how do we actually create these desirable difficulties? Let's kick things off with one of the most powerful and honestly weird-feeling techniques out there: interleaving. This is all about mixing up different topics or skills in one single study session, and it's the perfect cure for that illusion of competence. Think about how a typical math textbook works. It shows you how to do, say, the Pythagorean theorem. And then what follows? A dozen practice problems that all use the Pythagorean theorem. You're just executing the same formula over and over. But that design completely skips the most important step in real-world problem solving: choosing the right strategy to begin with. You're only practicing the easy part.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got blocked practice. That's the classic method. You do all of problem type A, then all of problem type B. It feels smooth, your performance is high, and you feel like a genius. But you're not actually learning how to tell A and B apart. Now look at the right. Interleaved practice. It's all jumbled up. This feels way harder. You're going to make more mistakes for sure. Why? Because every single problem forces you to stop and ask, okay, wait, what kind of problem is this? What tool do I need? That little bit of struggle is everything. That's your brain learning to discriminate.
And this is not just for math class, not by a long shot. Think about a baseball batter. You could have them practice hitting 20 fastballs in a row, and they'd get pretty good at it. But in a real game, they have no idea what's coming next. A fastball, a curveball, a changeup. The real world is interleaved. It's the same for art. To really know the difference between a Monet and a Manet, you need to see their paintings mixed up, forcing your brain to spot the subtle differences.
Now you might be thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, but does it actually work? Well, let's look at the proof. There was this fantastic study done with 7th grade math students. Over a few months, all the kids learned the same stuff and did the exact same practice problems. The only difference was how their homework was arranged. One group did their homework in blocks, all the problems of one type together. The other group got the exact same problems, but all mixed up in their assignments.
A month after all the practice was done, the researchers gave the kids a surprise test. And the results, they were just jaw-dropping. The kids who used the traditional blocked practice, they scored a 42%.
The students who did the interleaved homework scored a 74%. That is a massive difference. We're not talking a few points here. They nearly doubled their scores, just by changing the order of the problems. That's the power of forcing your brain to practice choosing the right strategy.
So, interleaving is a total game changer, but it's even more powerful when you combine it with a couple of other related strategies. So let's talk about two more tools for your kit: spacing and retrieval.
Space practice is pretty much what it sounds like. It's the exact opposite of cramming. Instead of one monster 5-hour study session, you're way better off doing 5 one-hour sessions spread out across the week. This spacing effect is one of the most solid, most replicated findings in psychology. You actually let yourself forget a little bit in between sessions. That forces your brain to work harder to recall the information, which makes the memory stronger. And what's cool is that interleaving kind of helps you do this automatically. By mixing up topics, you're naturally spacing out the practice for any single one.
And that leads us to maybe the most important strategy of them all: retrieval practice. This is simply the act of actively pulling information out of your head. Here's the key. Every time you successfully retrieve a memory, you're not just looking at it, you are fundamentally changing it. You're strengthening its connections, making it easier to find next time. It is so much more powerful than just passively putting the information in again by rereading your notes.
So how do you do it? It's really simple. After you read a chapter, just close the book, put your notes away, and then try to write down or even say out loud everything you just learned. Then open the book back up and check your work. See what you got right, and more importantly, see where the gaps are. Flashcards are a perfect classic example of this. The whole point is to force yourself to generate the answer, not just recognize it on the page.
I love this quote from the Bjorks because it just sums everything up perfectly. Most of us think learning is all about input: reading, watching, listening. We try to pour information into our brains. But that's not where the real work happens. The real learning, the stuff that sticks, happens on the output side, when we're pulling information out. So let's put it all together. Interleaving, spacing, retrieval, they're all just different flavors of desirable difficulties. They all make you work a little harder in the short term, but they pay off big time with learning that actually lasts, because they force you to engage with what you're learning on a much, much deeper level.
And this chart just brings us full circle, right back to that illusion of competence. In this study, students learned to identify different painters. Look at the left. That's how they felt about their learning. Overwhelmingly, they thought blocked practice was better. It just felt easier, smoother. But now look at the right. That's their actual score on the test. It's the complete opposite. The interleaved group crushed it. This is the perfect picture of why we can't trust our feelings when we study. What feels easy is often the least effective.
So what's the game plan? Here it is. This is your new learning toolkit. First, interleave. Mix up your practice. Second, space. No more cramming. Study a little bit more often. Third, retrieve. Make testing yourself the main event, not rereading. And finally, and this is the big one, change your mindset. Embrace that feeling of difficulty. If it feels hard, it's not a sign you're failing, it's a sign that it's working.
So the next time you sit down to learn something, you've got a choice. You can go down the easy, comfortable path of rereading, the one that feels productive but leads to forgetting. Or you can choose the harder path, the path with a little more struggle, the path of interleaving, spacing, and retrieval that leads to knowledge that actually sticks. So are you ready to make your learning a little harder? To make it a lot better?